Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, a podcast where two exes discuss everything from the Spanish conquest of Mexico and religious apparitions to the challenges of going to gigs as we get older. As always, we'll be dropping in a few celebrity encounters, so keep listening to find out which Baywatch star we ran into in New York City and which character from Absolutely Fabulous one of us spotted in a juice bar in Chelsea last week. Enjoy the show. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, the podcast where we, Sean and me, tell you about where each other are going wrong and maybe where you are going wrong as well. I'm Josh.
And I'm Sean, and I'm going to start by tell you where you're going wrong. I think you made a grammatical error by saying Sean and me. I think it should be Sean and I.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I apologize profusely.
You don't need to be sorry. You just need to be correct.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Wow.
Okay. Well, my first thing of the day is I was gifted this. Do you know Hill's friend Luis was visiting from Mexico? Yes. And he went to see Kylie Minogue perform. Not that this is a Minogue podcast. There's already one.
I know. Why are we the new Minogue? What is that called? What's that? This is Disco.
This is Disco.
No, this isn't. This is Disco 2.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So I was given this gift that was bought. It was limited edition, only available at the Hyde Park gig.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very nice. What does it say on it? I can't really...
Well, it says Kylie, Hyde Park, London, July 2024.
Very nice.
And so this might make a few appearances in the pod today. Do you pick up the wind on the mic, or is that okay?
No, it's fine. I can just hear a very sort of quiet fluttering of a fan.
Can you hear a quiet homosexuality happening?
I can. It's the gayest sound I've ever heard.
Anyway, so that's nice, isn't it? But
very nice.
We talked about Danny a lot last time, and
yes,
this is not a Minogue podcast that already exists. So
that's true. I really wanted to go to that gig actually because I mean I do like Kylie, but I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan. But Marina was opening for Kylie, and I love Marina. But I'd been at a gig at Hyde Park the day before, so I wasn't sure I could do like standing around in Hyde Park for 6 hours, 2 days in a row. I think these old bones aren't quite up to that anymore.
When I think about going to gigs, even ones that are seated now, I have to really, really think if I want to go. Mm-hmm. I was thinking of going to see Kylie, and especially with Marina, added value as well. I absolutely love Marina, but there's no way I could stand around for... How many hours would it be? Like, you don't get there at like a normal gig, 'cause there's about 8 people on stage, right?
Yeah, well, I was stood for about 5.5 hours, I think.
No.
And then there's all the walking to and from. So, but honestly, by the end of the day, you're absolutely ruined. I think I did something like 30,000 steps that day. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah.
And like even like a gig that's in a small venue now, if you need to go and they tell you, it starts at 7:30, but it doesn't start at 7:30. Yeah. But you don't know what time it starts because they make it very difficult to find out starting times.
I know. We need to, really pass a law about this because it's, for those getting on in life, let's just say, for those approaching their 50s or already in their 50s, you need to figure out sort of what time is the optimum time to arrive. You don't want to get there and stand around for 2 hours. And Sean and I, neither of us drink. Well, so I say that I did have some Kylie. Sorry, all roads lead back to the Minogues, but I did have some Kylie Prosecco the other night. But normally I don't drink, and neither does Sean. And so there's little imperative to get to a gig an hour or two before it starts and have a drink or anything. So it would be really nice if venues could actually publish the stage time. Some venues are fantastic and they do, but others are not so forthcoming. So yeah, that's
I'm not against supporting venues financially, but when you don't drink alcohol, what else is there to do? I also don't drink like sodas or fizzy drinks anymore. Like I've given them up. So I can buy a bottle of water but that's all I can do. And I don't know how much money they're making from that. And I don't really want to stand around for an extra 2 hours just drinking water. Like
No,
it's not
no,
that exciting to me. And
no.
I mean, I know we should support bands, but sometimes you just want to see the act that is the
Hmm.
headliner. You don't want
Yeah,
to.
I know. It is a bit shit, isn't it? But sometimes, I just don't. I have no bandwidth for anyone but the act that I paid to see.
What was the
Um,
last time you went to a gig where you were really surprised by the support act and you didn't know who they were before you got there? Has there been a time where that's ever happened? I can
I'm
remember.
sure. I'm
I can
sure there
remember
has.
one time there's a gig that you and I went to where we
Which
were
one?
blown away by the support act, and it was a very very long time ago. We went to
I
see,
know who you're. Yeah, I know who you're going to
we went to
say.
see Tegan and Sarah in Pomona in California.
Hmm.
Do you remember what the
Yeah,
venue was? Was it called the
it
Glass
was.
House or something like that?
Yeah, but it was part of. It was the University of California Pomona campus, wasn't it? It was. Was
I,
it one of the venues there?
I don't remember it being part of a university, but I remember it being in a college town, or
Okay.
the college part of town. I mean, I know there's more than just a college in Pomona, but I can remember seeing Lost Abandoned. That I don't know how you describe them: pop, indie pop, punk,
Hmm.
folk. They do all types of music, but
Yeah.
they're really really an amazing band.
Yeah.
That was the first time we'd ever heard of them, and the first time we'd heard their music. And I remember us being both being blown away by it and becoming fans. And I mean, I still count myself a fan to this day.
Mm.
What
Yeah. Yeah. I
year
remember.
would that have been?
Oh, I remember that it was pre-mobile phones. I remember going to a FedEx Kinko's and printing out MapQuest directions to get there.
Do you remember?
So I don't know, 2006 maybe?
Do you remember when we would go on these road trips in the US and we would have to print out every page, or
Oh, it
maybe
was
not
like
every
four,
page,
no, but it was like 4 or 5 pages long sometimes, depending on where you were going.
but if we were driving, say, from Los Angeles to Las Vegas,
Yeah.
we would obviously not print out the road in the middle, but
Mm-mm.
either end, because I don't understand how people knew otherwise where to go.
I don't know.
It used
I
to happen.
don't. I just don't understand how anything happened or worked
And
pre sort of technology.
we used to have, you would buy like in London there was a really famous street guide called A to Z,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so you would use that to get around London. I can remember when
yeah.
I
And
first,
everyone had a copy in their car. Like, and in
even
Australia, what was it in Sydney? It was called a Refidex, wasn't it? Was it
yeah,
Refidex?
Rolodex, I think.
Yeah.
But in London, when I first arrived here, when you'd go for like job interviews, like say you'd go to a job center or a what do you call it, like a work agency that finds you work,
Oh
an
yeah, an employment agency.
employment agent. The first thing they would tell you to do is buy an A to Z, like a mini one, a pocket
Yep.
version to carry around with you, because when you went for job interviews and they would just give you the address, there was
Yeah.
no other way to know how to get there but except looking up the address in the A to Z and then
Yeah.
following that like a map. It is a map.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think now, like, if you didn't experience that, you would think it was like outrageous, right?
Yeah.
That people had to carry little books around with them to find where to go, because
Yeah.
otherwise there would just be no way of knowing where you were going.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of finding addresses, if I look a little tired, it might be because at 11:30 last night, just as I was snoozing off, the doorbell rang, and I went downstairs. It wasn't Uber Eats. It was oh, I forget. It's the one with the orange bag. Just Eat? No, I don't know. Whatever the food delivery company was, it was a guy with a food delivery, and he said, "Your delivery," and I said, "No." So I haven't ordered anything. And I said, "What address do you have?" And he read out a completely different address, completely different road. And I was a bit annoyed. I mean, I felt bad because I mean, who wants to be knocking on doors or ringing doorbells at 11:30 at night? It's not the nicest job to do. But at the same time, I was like, if you can't read an address um, off of your device, and you're delivering food to addresses, it is a bit of a concern.
Well, I mean, was he even in the right suburb or neighborhood?
The name of the street he told me didn't ring any bells, so
Did it have a
I don't know.
postcode or?
I didn't get that far. I just basically said, no, this is not the right address.
I think that it's fair to, or it's good to note that a lot of people who are employed in these roles are in exploitative
Oh,
situations.
completely,
And
completely.
so, if somebody maybe is struggling with the way that the address is formatted, or even the language that it's in, it could be
Mm.
that English is an additional language for them. Uh,
Yeah, I
uh,
know that.
and it's really tough. I mean, when I used to work at when I was helping Make No Bones, it's a vegan, but I'll tell the listeners, it's a vegan restaurant that used to exist in Sheffield. And when I was working there and used to have to bag up the orders for deliveries, the addresses sometimes would be incomplete, like the system wouldn't put them properly,
Mm.
or they would be illegible, like you couldn't read what they said. And so, if you put somebody in a position where they're often getting paid less than minimum wage,
Yeah.
and they're having to use their own vehicle at their own expense. And in Sheffield, it sometimes was like -2 or -3 outside and snowing, and
Hmm.
it's dark at like 3 p.m. and you have to deal with all of this. I mean, I'm
Mm.
surprised that mistakes don't happen all the time.
I know all of that, and that's why I say, like, it's not the nicest job to do at all. However, when you're falling asleep at 11:30 at night and the doorbell rings, I was not maybe they didn't get the best version of me.
Right? If they'd shown up an hour earlier, you would
Yeah,
have
if they'd
still
shown
been,
up an hour early, I would have greeted them with my frosted tips,
and you still would have
I
been high from the Kylie prosecco from the
yeah,
night
and I
before.
would have said, "I'm sorry, this is not the right address, but let me just print out some MapQuest directions for you."
Yeah. Did you ask them if it was vegan? You could have just taken it.
I could have, but no. At 11:30 at night, all I wanted to do was sleep.
I I'm reading this book. Sorry to completely swivel, but I'm just looking at this book next to me.
Uh-huh.
I think you've maybe seen me reading it before, but it's this it's this book, a collection of writings about Mexico,
Oh, okay.
and it's different journalists and activists have written. Some people have written about indigenous languages. Some people have written about religion. There's a lot of stuff in here about the drug cartels.
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you something because do you know when we were in Mexico and we went to the Basilica?
Yes.
Can you maybe just explain to people what the Basilica is in case somebody's listening and they don't know what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not sure if we mentioned in our first episode that Sean and if you haven't watched the first episode, you might be wondering, firstly, what the hell's going on in this podcast. So Sean and I, we are, Sean is one of my best friends. You'll have to watch the first episode as a reference point for that. But we used to be in a relationship. So we were together for 20 years and we separated about 7 years ago. But during some of those 20 years together, and even a few years afterwards, we both lived in Mexico City. And so I don't know if we mentioned that in the last episode. So if anyone's wondering why Sean's reading a book about Mexico and why I'm about to talk about the Basilica in Mexico City, it's because Sean and I lived there for several years. And it's where we ended our relationship as well, actually. So and that's where Sean met his husband, his new husband, in Mexico City as well. Um, but the basilica is the Basilica of Guadalupe. Guadalupe is a Mexican saint, religious icon. She is I forget there's an academic term that escapes me at the moment, but she's widely sort of regarded as a sort of crossover between the Catholic Church and indigenous, not so much religion, but just indigenous beliefs. So she is the sort of Catholic interpretation of an indigenous holy figure or religious figure or spiritual figure. So she's widely considered sort of the mother of Mexico in terms of like a Catholic paradigm. Um, And in Mexico City, in the north of the city, there's a huge basilica built to honor her. And I think it was built on or very close to the site where what was the name of the guy?
Juan Diego.
Diego, yeah, Juan Diego had a vision of Guadalupe many years ago when the Spanish were first colonizing Mexico.
I mean, that's what I wanted to ask you about, your memory of visiting that site. Because I'm reading this, I've just finished reading the section about Guadalupe.
Mm.
And the term that you were looking for is syncretism.
I thought it started with an S, but I couldn't. Yeah,
Yeah,
syncretism.
so
Yeah.
yeah, like the sort of blending of um, religions or cultures to
Hmm.
keep both of them alive and often to exploit
Well,
population.
I know. I mean, it was quite a coincidence, wasn't it? That just
Yeah,
as the Spanish were trying to take over what we now know as Mexico, that there was a religious appearance.
and so she is a would you say it's syncretic? The
I think so. Yeah.
syncretic form of somebody who was seen by many indigenous peoples to be like the mother of all gods.
Hmm.
Tonantzin, I think you pronounce it, Tonantzin, and the Virgin. Like it's so it's. But what in this book it said, when you go inside the basilica, so it's like a
Hmm.
big church, and they have a moving walkway that goes under the altar.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when they have every December when they have the pilgrimage there, and millions of people come from all over the world to keep people moving, they have this moving walkway so people can stand there and look in awe, but not stop and block the
Mm.
flow of people. And it carries like thousands of people every hour through. But do you remember, like, the story of Juan Diego was that the Virgin appeared to him and
Hmm.
said, to prove to people that this is what happened, I'm going to make some roses bloom on this spot,
Oh yeah.
and where nothing has ever grown before. And I want you to wrap them up in your cloak and take them and prove to whoever was in charge or whoever
Hmm.
needed to be told that this is a miracle and that I want a sort of a shrine or a church built here so people can come and pray.
Mm.
And so the story is, or the legend is, that Juan Diego wrapped the roses and took them. And when he got to where he was going and unfurled it or like shook out his cloak or piece of cloth, that the roses had left a stain in the image of
Oh
the,
yeah.
the Virgin.
Yeah.
This book suggests that cloak or robe is inside the basilica, and that's what everyone's looking at. But I don't remember seeing it. Do you?
Yeah. I have vague memory of that.
And do you remember it looking anything like an image of the
I don't
Virgin?
remember. It was a long day. It was a long day. I don't really remember.
Because we'd also been out to
Teotihuacan.
to the pyramids as well that
Yeah.
day, and a few other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just reading that, and I was like, I don't really remember um, seeing that, but it must be there. Like, and why it's so revered and why people come from all over the world is because it's one of the only surviving artifacts that claims to have like a miracle stamped on it, imprinted, or whatever you call it. Like
Hmm.
there's a religious term for when that happens. So a
Yeah.
lot of these other shrouds and pieces of evidence just don't exist anymore, and that people believe that this one's still intact. Like,
Mm.
what would it be, like 800, 500 years?
Yeah. About 500 years.
500 years later is because it's truly a miracle. So it's from really revered by Catholics all over the planet. So they come. I think there's like 20 million people or something visit
Yeah.
that site every year from all over. And
Mm.
so I was just really fascinated by that. And I don't really have a memory of seeing that piece of material. I I got thinking about that as well because sometimes things happen like two things at once to get you on the same train of thought. But
Hmm.
yesterday I was at a doctor's appointment, and the person who was helping me, the health provider, asked me if I was religious,
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no. And she said, oh, well, I just want to say that some things happen for a reason then. Like, I think she was going to use some sort of religious analogy or something on me that
Yeah.
it's okay, everything has, there's a divine plan or something. And then when I said, no, I'm not at all religious, she sort of shifted tact and said, oh, well, maybe you can just look at it as fate or things happen for a reason then. And I
But
thought that
look
was
at what?
strange. Well, just things that happen in your life, like
Oh, okay.
if you're having a tough time or a medical problem or whatever it is.
Okay.
Like in this instance, she's like, "Are you religious?"
So she wasn't saying that as she was about to deliver some bad news or anything.
No, no, but it was like a designed to be like I suppose, an understanding or coping mechanism that I
Okay.
was going to maybe rely on my faith to, and I just found that really weird. And then I came home and read about the Virgin and the Basilica again, and I was like, oh yeah, people believe that those roses formed this image of the Virgin, and I was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, no, that's not for me. I mean, I'm interested in it, and I'm interested, especially in the syncretism of it, and talking about um, Santa Muerte. Like
Mm-hmm.
anyway, we probably shouldn't get into too many things that we have to try and act like scholars of
Which
indigenous Mexican,
clearly not.
indigenous Americans history and stuff. Like it's not our place
Hmm.
to sort of break this down and explain it to everyone. But
Hmm.
it's just interesting to me. Like I like reading about that sort of stuff.
Well, when I hear about those sort of religious apparitions, the first thing that comes to my mind is the episode of Derry Girls, where they have the
Yeah.
Virgin Mary is crying, and it's actually turns out to be Toto.
Oh, it's so funny. Do you know something I've always thought about that scene?
What?
Is that they took inspiration from that episode of Peep Show where, do you know, Mark is going to get married to Sophie, who is Olivia Colman,
Hmm.
and they get to church, but then he says, I don't want to do it anymore. So Mark and Jeremy go upstairs to the balcony, and
Yeah.
Jeremy really needs to go to the toilet, and he can't hold it anymore, and he relieves himself in his trousers. Then it starts dripping down through the
Oh,
bottom of
yeah.
the
I
toilet.
totally forgotten about that. Yes.
I think that
Yeah.
maybe it's like some sort of twisted homage
Yeah.
to Peep Show, because it's just so coincidental that it's like somebody peeing upstairs and it's dripping down. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, maybe it's not, maybe it's a complete coincidence. And who's the writer of Derry Girls? Lisa.
Lisa McEwen? No, I forget. I don't know. I should look it up.
But
But
maybe Lisa saw that, or maybe it's a completely made up story. Maybe it's based on something that happened to her. I don't know, but I just thought,
yeah.
as as a comedy from the United Kingdom,
Yeah.
that it was maybe a little bit inspired by that, or a little nod to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all art is theft, as they say.
Yeah. And talking of art being theft, no,
Mm.
but like I saw Lulu yesterday.
Oh, yeah, you did. How funny.
We need to explain once again. It's all of these references that, unless you're from a specific place, time, demographic, you might not know who some of these people are.
Hmm.
So Lulu is a pop singer who's originally from Scotland, and she became famous in the late '60s. Was it?
I think so. I mean, I don't know.
So
hadn't been born yet, but I believe so.
no,
Yes.
no, I wasn't born. She became famous just before my time, but I think she used to hang out with like the Beatles and
Yeah, I think so. What was her really big song from the 60s? Was
Shout.
it Shout? Yeah.
But
Okay.
obviously, that was a cover. Like that was done originally by
Yeah.
a rock and roll band or a rhythm band from like the US, right?
Probably. I
I
mean,
don't know.
most sort of songs did get about 6 or 7 versions back in those days.
And so she was very famous, but then she became one of these people that was then just always famous, even if she didn't do anything for 20 years.
Yeah. Well,
So
she was Adina Monsoon's client in Ab Fab, wasn't she?
yes, and the joke was she couldn't get her any bookings because
Yeah, and it was
it,
her only client as well, I think.
yeah. But there could be a whole episode on Absolutely Fabulous. I was, oh my, I was listening. Get back to Lulu in a second, but I was listening to a short clip online of Adina talking to Bubble. Was it Bubble or Bubbles?
Bubbles, yeah.
Was it with an S or was it?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
sometimes she would say Bubble, darling,
I'm
like she
sure.
wouldn't put the S on it.
Oh, well, I always thought it was Bubbles.
And there's that really well-known, like to fans of the show, there's that famous line where she says, "Yes, I'm in the car. I'm in the car as soon as it arrives," and she's still in her pajamas.
Yeah.
Like, you just hold down the fort at your end. I'm dealing with things at this end. I know you are, darling. I'm running. I'm running out the door. I'm chanting as I speak. and and I was just like laughing my head off at that line, because do you remember when the Pet Shop Boys made that song?
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous. So they took all lines from the song and made it into a disco
Yes.
dance song, and that was
Yeah.
one of the lines they used. Like,
Yeah, that's
just
right.
like this repetitive dance housey sort of song, and
Hmm.
it's just like Jennifer Saunders saying, I'm
Chanting as a.
chanting as I speak."
But wait, go back to Lulu. So wait, you were in Chelsea, were you?
Yeah, so I was over there to go see this doctor's appointment at the
Uh-huh.
hospital in
Go
Chelsea.
to see the religious propagandist
Yeah,
doctor's office. Uh-huh.
and then I was looking for something, relatively healthy or healthy-ish and vegan to eat. Oh, that's another thing. If you're watching this and you haven't realized by now, I'm not just called fat gay vegan because I think it's a funny group of words, but I'm also vegan. But I was looking for something vegan, and you'd mentioned to me, is that vegan place Juice Baby still
Mm.
there on the King's Road in
Hmm.
Chelsea? And so I had a look on the map, and it was just around the corner from where my appointment was, and I was there a little bit early, so I needed lunch. So I went in and I ordered the most ridiculously expensive, like, two pieces of gluten-free toast that were like miniature,
Hmm.
with it's like a vegan tuna paste made out of crushed sunflower seeds,
Okay.
and then it had chili oil on it. It was delicious, but it was tiny, which is fine.
Hmm.
And then I got one of their like sugar-free millionaire shortbread slices. Do you remember they do these, like all these sugar-free, or they make?
Yeah, it's lovely. I really like Juice Baby. I haven't been
Yeah.
there in years,
Oh,
but
the
yeah, it's
food,
very
food.
tasty. It's very like, earnest, righteous, kind of healthy angle, but not in a sort of, taste like cardboard
Yeah,
way. Everything is really, really tasty. So
delicious. So yeah, anyway,
yeah.
after I spent like £14 on two little things of food,
Uh-huh.
I was sat there eating and taking my time, and this person walked past me to the counter, and I could hear, just looking at them, even from the back, they looked
Mm.
familiar, which is weird, right? Like that you could
I don't
recognize.
know. I think it's I'll tell the Carmen Electra story another day, another
Oh,
time. But
calm.
I think like when you've seen somebody enough, either photographs of them or in on TV or in films, in music videos and stuff. I think we do become quite good at recognizing somebody just from maybe the shape of their head, their profile.
The shape of their head. But
Yeah,
isn't it weird that I've never seen Lulu in real person, in real life?
right.
I obviously, back in the '90s, I was a big Take That fan, and she did that song with Take That.
Hmm.
She sang, how weird is that as well? Like, somebody who was considered a washed up kind of like C grade celebrity who was did a duet with the biggest pop band of the day.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
wonder. I wonder if. I wonder when Gary Barlow wrote "Relight My." Well, hang on. Did
he
he
didn't
write
write
that?
it?
It
It
was
was
a cover, wasn't it?
the cover, yeah.
And do you know if the original version had a sort of a guest singer in that part, or
No, no.
Okay.
I,
And I
I
wonder.
kind of feel there's so many tangents here where Lulu sent us down like a spiral, but I think that maybe they did that because you know how their manager really forced them to pander to their queer fan base? That I think that maybe they
Ah,
roped in Lulu because it was camp and
I think it
funny,
was
and
queer baiting.
it was queer baiting, but it was also old timer baiting. So people
Yeah,
who, spanning generations. So,
yeah.
they'd often do that with Stockacre and Waterman as well, with, Kylie or Jason or whoever. They would get them to record an old ballad from like
Mm,
the 60s or 70s. So
mm,
that way, when, a teenager was playing the record, the
Mm.
parents would go, "Oh, I don't mind that. That's not too bad." And then,
Yeah, strategically, it's
yeah,
quite, it's
and I
quite a
think
good thing.
Lulu was maybe a bit of a strategic addition to that.
I
But
wonder
then,
if anyone else was ever considered for that guest vocal.
but then she went on tour with them, right? Like, because she would come out and sing that, but then they were having a Lulu open for Take That, I think,
Yeah.
on that tour. But anyway, so back to recognizing the
So
shape
you
of
saw
Lulu.
the shape of Lulu.
Yeah, it
It
was
was
like,
this is like Juan Diego in his
yeah,
religious
it was
apparition.
exactly like that. I scattered the roses on the floor, and it was the shape of Lulu.
You scattered the chia seed dessert on the floor.
And the sunflower seed tuna.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was in the shape of Lulu's face on my toast. So I saw her, and then I heard her speaking, and she's Scottish, right? Originally from Scotland, but you know how she doesn't sound Scottish when she speaks.
I can't,
Got
to
a
be
bit of
honest, I can't remember the last time I heard her speak.
She has like a bit of an unusual accent, in that I don't know if it's easily placed. Like you
Okay.
don't go, oh yeah, that's there. And so I heard her speaking, and I'm like, okay, I'm sure this is her. And she had a dog with her. Not that
Hmm.
that's a Luluism, but she was walking a dog. And
Yeah.
I was looking at her, and I was like, okay. And so she ordered her food, but I couldn't quite hear. I could just hear little noises now and then, like that made me think it was her. And
Hmm.
so then she sort of sat down while she was waiting for her order. She was having a takeout order. And then when they called her order, they called her name and they said Lulu. I was like, imagine me,
Lulu.
Lulu. And I was like in the background, like, but imagine being that famous that you would. I mean, she was really famous, right? I mean, she's not in the UK. She's
Yeah, I mean, she's so recognizable, yeah. But then at the
so.
same time, I don't know. It's a really weird situation, I suppose. Like sort of, I don't know. Would anyone younger than
Hmm.
us know who she is, though?
No, and that you think, because even her sort of deep dive back into mainstream culture would Take That
What was
was
that, 90
30
something?
30 years ago.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so
And
those
since
people,
then,
yeah, that's us. That's our generation.
yeah, yeah,
So I don't know. I mean, obviously I don't think the servers had any idea who she was. There
yeah.
were other people in the, but it's all like the sort of Chelsea yoga set that goes in there.
Hmm.
So I already felt out of place. So um, I was probably the only person in there who was clinically overweight and who knew who Lulu was. That was
That's a
the two
very
people.
that's a very small intersection on the pie graph
Well, the
of
only
juice
other
baby
person who knew
customers.
that who Lulu was Lulu, and she wasn't overweight.
Mm.
But as she turned around, she got her bag, and her dog sort of got a little tangled in her feet.
Uh-huh.
And she was like, oh, and she made some sort of like little joke about her dog. And so I looked and I smiled at her and laughed. And she
Hmm.
smiled at me and laughed. And we had this little moment where, like, I smiled at Lulu and Lulu smiled at me. And
Oh,
then I was this close. Like, if you're only listening, I'm holding up two fingers with like a millimeter in between. I was this close to wanting to speaking to her about the song she did with Kavana,
yeah.
because I love that. I mean,
But it
it's
never got released, did it? It never got
no,
released.
no. It
So,
ended up on an album of his that was shelved, like maybe released
uh,
in Japan or something. But
uh,
if you don't know, if you're listening,
I,
Kavana
I think, yeah,
was,
you're going to have to explain to almost everyone who
yeah,
Kavana is.
in the 90s. Kavana, his I think his birth name was Anthony Kavana, and they changed his pop star name to just Kavana, and dropped the GH off the end, so it was Kavana. And he was a really handsome young pop singer who
From
had
Manchester, right? He was
from
Mancunian.
Manchester, and he had a couple of um, like almost hits, like maybe something
Mm,
got to like number 23 in the charts or something. But he was always on the cover of the pop star magazines because he was so cute and handsome, and everyone was trying to make him be a star. Like, also weirdly, this is a tie-in to Take That. His first single
mm.
was co-written by Howard Donald from Take That. and he never really made anything of it. And so
He had the same management as Take That, didn't he?
yeah.
Yeah.
So and maybe Lulu did as well. I don't know.
No, she was managed by Adina Monsoon.
Adina Monsoon. But a few years after his sort of stalled attempt at becoming a pop star, he tried to come back more as like an independent sort of artist.
Mm-hmm.
And he just out of the blue was on this morning TV show. How many years later? Maybe about 5 years later, 4 years later. He was on a morning TV show performing his new single, which was a duet with Lulu.
When you're not sure what to do, you just let's wheel out Lulu.
And they did this. He played live keyboard on this TV show, and they sang live together.
Yeah.
And they introduced each other as each other's best friends, or maybe she said one of her best friends, and he said my best friend. And they were saying this is my, and I'm like, he was about early 20s, if that. She was probably already in her 50s or 50s, and they were there saying we're best friends and we're gonna sing the song together. Anyway, it was a really great song, a really soppy ballad, and I loved it. But it never got released. It was so difficult to find that I had to record their performance. I recorded their performance on VHS, and then I had to then record the audio of that onto a cassette so I could listen to it. And I used to play the cassette. That was the only version I could ever get.
And is that performance on YouTube anywhere? Have you looked?
It must be around somewhere now. And so anyway, all of this years later, then I see Lulu in Juice Baby.
Juice Baby.
With the dog wrapped around her ankles, ordering a cheer.
You should have asked her if Kavana was still one of her best friends. One of her, yeah.
Well, her best friend. But also, do you know Cav, as I like to call him? There was that time I was in Manchester in 1998, and I saw him in a gay bar with a friend of his, and I went and bought them both without asking. I bought them both a glass of wine because they were drinking wine, and I gave it to them, and I said, "Oh, I'm a huge fan. Love you, blah, blah, blah." I mean, he must have been so tired of it because he'd just come off the back of a couple of years of trying to get a hit song and he couldn't, and all these annoying fans for nothing. And there I was trying to be like, "Oh, I love you, Cav, I love you." And I gave him the wine, and I turned around and they both ran out of the bar and left the wine on the counter.
Okay.
But then years later, he made his journey with alcoholism public. He's been very, very public about that. And so then I instantly felt guilty about trying to buy him that wine that time. But he also, I don't know if this is telling stories when I shouldn't, but somebody I know said that they were approached by him on a dating app if he would go on a date with them, like a gay dating app. I mean, he's openly gay. I'm not outing him. He's openly gay. Yeah, no, he has.
But he wasn't at the time, was he?
No, when he was
in the
younger,
closet when he was trying to break it into
and I think he has talked about how the pressure of like the heteronormativism of the pop world and the pressure of the pop world like forced him sort of into drinking and self-medicating. So he's had a really tough time. And then like in the 2000s, he went on one of those reality shows to find a new boy band.
Oh, right.
Where they got all of these guys who used to be in boy bands but weren't famous anymore.
Yeah, I vaguely remember
created a new band, but it didn't work. And he was still in the closet then, I think. He was still, I don't like that term. He still wasn't open about his sexuality then. And I don't think that worked. And then he maybe went on another one of these shows where, like The Voice or something, where you don't see who's singing at first and then you spin around, but he didn't get picked, maybe. I don't know. But he's had a few tries at trying to get back into the spotlight. The first of them with Lulu. If anyone's looking for that song, it's called Heart Like the Sun. I've got a heart like the sun. It burns on
and on.
Fueled by your loving.
But what's Kavana doing now? Have you looked him up?
Don't know. I know I do follow him on X, formerly Twitter, and I haven't seen any posts from him for a while. He had a couple of times, or maybe once or twice, where he struggled with his sobriety and then announced he was back sober again, and so he's
Okay.
always sort of asking for like well wishes and support of the fans. He was in a musical maybe for a little while, like a revival of a musical. But no, I'll need to investigate now that I've had my run in with
And
Lulu.
Cav, if you're watching or listening and you want us to tell you where you're going or where you're going wrong, then we're happy to
I would say
happy
that
to.
Cav is doing everything exactly the way it's meant to be. I'm as not a non-religious person. I can say that everything happens for a reason.
Of course, of
But I
course.
love Cav, and I'm in no position and would never dream of telling anyone really like how they should deal with the hard times in their life, and especially around things like self-medication.
Hmm.
Um, but I just wish Cav would make new music. I love.
Well, I wish that duet with Lulu would get a proper release. It was a really, really good song.
It might exist. I'm going to open Spotify. I'm chanting as I speak. I'm typing. I'm typing as I speak. I'm going to look up on Spotify and see if it's actually been listed because it was on what was meant to be his second album because he only ever released one album. And I think the
Yeah,
first album is on Spotify,
yeah.
but let's have a look.
I
But
can't remember any of his songs. You were a fan. I was never really a fan. I don't remember. Can you tell me what his biggest song was?
yeah, well,
Well, while you're
the
doing
one,
that, while you're
yeah,
while you're while you're distracted by a device while recording a podcast, I might just quickly tell the story about Carmen Electra because
oh yeah, sure.
Sean and I were in New York. I have no idea what year this was. It would have been yeah, some point in the late noughties or early teens, I guess. Um, Sean and I were in New York, and we saw that Joan Jett was playing, and we love Joan Jett. So we went to, oh, I wish I could remember the name of the venue. Um, but it was just not far from Union Square in New York. And we went to see Joan Jett. So Joan Jett was on stage. We were downstairs, I think. And is it called Irving Plaza? Was that the
Yeah,
name?
maybe it's
Yeah,
having.
Irving Plaza. Which, FYI, another interesting fact: the Irving Plaza, it's no longer open as a venue, but the building still exists, and that was where a lot of the ballroom, I think, all of the ballroom scenes from Pose are filmed in that venue.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But anyway, Sean and I were on the ground floor, and Joan Jett was on, and I looked up, and in the balcony, which is normally like the sort of the VIP area, in the balcony, I just saw this silhouette of a woman, and I said to Sean, I said, "That's Carmen Electra," and Sean was like, "How can you tell?" And I just said, "I just recognized her profile. I recognized because it was the balcony wasn't lit, but somehow." I just recognized coming. So we went upstairs so we could get closer to the balcony, and we looked, and sure enough, it was Carmen Electra. Um, so then we were drunk at this point. This is back in the days where we would drink a lot, and we waited at the stage door after the show, and we waited for ages and ages. Do you remember? And eventually, and there were lots of Joan Jett fans there as well. And I mean, I like Joan Jett, but I wasn't like like the kind of Joan Jett fan that would stand outside a stage door. But for Carmen Electra,
She's no Lulu.
she's no Lulu, she's no Cav. And so we waited and waited. And eventually, Joan Jett came out, and all the Joan Jett fans were like screaming, "Oh, Joan, 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 Joan!" And then Carmen Electra came, and Sean and I were so excited to see Carmen Electra because, well, I mean, I suppose we'll have to explain why.
I mean,
Because
everybody
Carmen
knows who
Electra,
Carmen Electra is, right?
well, no, not everyone will know, but
Most people who
most people
know
would
her
know her as the Baywatch actor and Playboy
model.
model.
Yeah, like she was in other things, like maybe some of those scary
Oh yeah,
movies,
yeah.
or so she was seen as um, like a sexy, desirable woman for straight men, all through
Hmm.
like the 2000, like late
What,
90s, 2000.
90s? Yeah,
Um,
90s.
and she wasn't she married to Tommy Lee for a little bit? Or am I
I
imagining that?
don't know.
Who was she married to? Oh, Dennis Rodman? I can't remember.
Oh, yes, I
I
think you're
think
right.
maybe she was
Yeah.
married to Dennis Rodman for
Yeah, I
like
think you're
12
right.
days or something. I don't know.
But
But
anyway, so
anyway,
she was known as a sort of, sexy, pin-up sort of 90s
yeah.
babe or whatever you want to call it.
But
But
before that, okay, the first time I ever heard the words Carmen Electra, I was at a Prince concert in Brisbane in the very early 90s. It was the Prince Diamonds and Pearls tour. And before Prince came out on stage, they had the big video screens at the side, and it just kept flashing up these couple of phrases. And it was like, Carmen Electra is inevitable. Carmen is the future. She is the sexiest female on the planet. Like, and we were all like, what does this mean? Like, there was no explanation. No one had ever heard of what this was. And then eventually what it turned out was that it was this performer who Prince had taken as I suppose, a protege and given her the name Carmen Electra. That's not her birth name or even her own chosen stage name. It's the name Prince chose, and
mm,
wrote and recorded an album with her for her of
mhm.
all these like rap songs and dance songs. It is one of the best albums of all time. I know a
Is
lot of people think it's tacky,
is
but
that on Spotify?
I don't know actually.
I probably isn't.
And it was very hard to get. It had a
It's
really failed, miserable rollout. But she had a song that was a little bit of a hit in the dance clubs called Go Go Dancer. And she was rapping, she was singing, because she was a dancer. All of the videos were her like dancing really seductively and energetically. And so I used to collect everything Carmen Electra. I had 12-inch singles, DJ pressings, like video cassettes that I could get hold of that had her music videos on them. But she never really did anything.
Mhm.
And she, when we saw, I mean, years later, how many years after she was that original album?
Probably more than 15 years, like a
So we
long
saw
time.
her coming out of the Joan Jett gig, and we were singing these songs to her,
She's got
drunk.
a line. She's got I don't know if it's from Go Go Dancer or one of the other songs on the album, but she's got a line where someone says, "You speak American?" She says, "No, speak Carmenese." And
And
so we were drunk, yelling out, "We love you, Carmen!" And we were like, "Speak Carmenese." And Joan Jett was just so amused
but
that
I also
coming out
don't
of
think she knew what was going on, because I don't think she would have been familiar. Joan Jett would have been familiar with that album.
I
Like
don't know,
it was,
who knows? Who
and
knows?
there's that line at the beginning of Go Go Dancer, which is where she says, "In the back of my mind, an animalistic ritual, me swinging from a brass pole." And I was
Uh-huh.
like, quoting all these lines to her, and she was really amused by it. She was just like,
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah.
And she was like saying to Joan Jett, "These guys know all my songs from my first album." And I was like, "Oh my God, please tell me you're doing more music." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm doing more music." And then, do you remember a little while later, she had that song came out called
Yeah, I like
um,
it loud.
"I Like It Loud," and it didn't chart or
Yeah,
anything anywhere.
but we had a photo. We got a photo with her, didn't we?
Yeah, I don't know whatever happened to that.
Oh, I'd love to be
And
able
we
to
were like
find that.
pushing Joan Jett out the way.
Yeah. Stand aside, Joan.
But all of the people that were around as well were just like, who are these people freaking out over? Like,
Yeah,
people
yeah,
kind of knew who she was, but why we would
yeah.
have that?
Most people would have known her just from Baywatch, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, that was.
Well,
Oh, talking of, this ties into something else that I saw this week. Um, Prince did all the Carmen's first album with her, and did a lot of the backing vocals, all the music, everything. The
hmm.
Barbican, which is a arts centre near my house here in London, they have like an outdoor cinema
Oh yeah, I saw an advert
in
for that.
summer. Like, they have it out on one of their forecourts, and they have a big screen. And they are showing, in a couple of weeks, they're showing the Prince Sign of the Times concert film.
Oh no way.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I want to go see that. If you don't know, the Sign of the Times is an album by Prince that was released in 1987, and at the time, Prince directed a concert film. So it's part live concert film, but then they've also filmed little segues and skits that are interspersed with it, like
Hmm.
seamlessly done. So even like they filmed it, I think, in the Netherlands, like the live big concert, and then they recorded all like the cutaway shots where like he's making like eye rolls to the camera or he says something to someone on stage. They recorded all those close-ups at Paisley Park on one of the sound stages, and they blended it together to make this concert film. I mean, most music critics regard it as one of the greatest concert films of all time. And it's all of the tracks from the Sign of the Times double album.
Wow.
So I'm, you know, I love it. I mean, I've already seen it probably over 100 times as a Prince fan, but it would be nice to see it on a big screen inside the Barbican,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
outside the Barbican. And
But you never know what the British summertime's going to bring in terms of weather. But
no, but
yeah,
does this sound too much money? Does £18 plus booking fee sound too much to see a film? Like something that you've already seen as
I
well?
mean, if it was guaranteed to be weatherproof, yes. No, sorry. I mean, I wouldn't mind paying £18 to see that, but what if it rains?
The weather is so unpredictable. I mean, I've been up since about 6 a.m. this morning. I've already seen rain, a windstorm. Now it's like blaring sunshine,
Hmm.
and it's in the space of a couple of hours. We've had all of that. So yeah, I don't know if I want to take the risk of paying all that money. And I
Yeah.
think the screenings go ahead no matter what because
Oh, yeah. So that's a bit of a
they've,
gamble.
they've taken.
Listen, did you find out if the Kavana song is on
Oh,
Spotify?
okay. But you're also asking me about Cav's. Um, he had an
Oh,
album.
his biggest hit.
His first album, it had that song "Crazy Chance," which was the one co-written by Howard from Take That. I Can
Mm.
Make You Feel Good.
That was a cover, though.
Yeah, I think most of them are covers.
Okay.
MFEO.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Which
Um,
stands for Made for Each Other, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
so they were sort of the biggest songs on the first album, and then they released a second album in 1998, and this is where they really tried to push him as a more mature pop star, and it just like he was getting to like number 18 and stuff. Special Kind of Something.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That rings a
Um,
bell.
Will You Wait for Me? Do you remember that ballad? It
No.
was like Will You Wait for Me in Heaven? And that's actually, I think, probably his most streamed song because even though people don't know who he is, Will You Wait for Me is often played at funerals.
Oh, really?
Because yeah, the lyric is I think it's about one of his childhood friends who died or something, and so he says, "Will you
Uh,
wait for me in heaven?" And so
okay.
if you have a look, some of his songs that were big singles only have been streamed 300,000 times, but "Will You Wait for Me" has been streamed nearly 14 million times.
Oh, God.
So
Oh, okay.
that, but no, I don't think I can't find that song because I think it was going to be on a third album.
Hmm.
So let me just search by the title of the song. Oh, actually, yeah, here it is.
With Lulu or just Kavana?
Oh, I
You
won't
can't
play
play it
it.
on here.
I won't play it. But anyway, yeah, no, it's credited to Kavana and Lulu,
Oh, okay.
and so it must it must be it must be what do you call it? Like a single added. I'll have to have a look when I get off, but it's definitely on there. So if anyone wants to hear about so I suppose to wrap this podcast up somewhat as well, come full circle. If you want to hear who Lulu is, you can either go and watch a few clips on YouTube of her in the 60s. I don't know if she was big in the 70s. And then again in the 90s, she was singing with Take That on a song called Relight My Fire. It was a massive, massive hit in the UK and all around Europe. And then you can listen to Heart Like the Sun, a beautiful duet by Kavana and Lulu.
And we'll also have to find out if Carmen Electra's music is on Spotify as well.
Uh,
Um,
it's really an education service, isn't it, we're running here?
it really is. Somebody after last week's episode, somebody wrote to us and said, "Can we tell them where they're going wrong?" And you absolutely can. So I've said yes. If you are listening or watching and you think you need advice from two people who are vastly underqualified to give any advice, by all means, tell us what your question is, what your problem is. we're more than happy to try and give you some half-assed advice.
And we have a disclaimer in which we say all advice given is for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
And we cannot be held liable if you follow our advice.
Then your life falls apart.
And we can't guarantee we'll even give it much thought before we give you advice, but we will try and we'll do our best to make it entertaining at least.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you got planned for the rest of the day?
I've got a million things I need to do for my hopefully upcoming Spotify release of music. But the closer I get, the list of things I need to do grows and grows and grows. So I feel like I'm sort of fighting a losing battle at the moment, but I'll get there at some point.
Well, if things feel tough and feel insurmountable, just remember that everything happens for a reason.
Thank you, Kylie Sean.
Okay.
All right. That's it for this week's episode, but we'll be back in your feeds really soon. And Sean, just to remind our listeners, where can people find you?
If you want to follow me on Instagram or TikTok or anywhere really, you can just search for me with these words, Fat Gay Vegan, and I should come up.
Okay. And I'm on platforms as Josh and the Jumpstarts, because that's my band name, and hopefully at some point in the next 6 years, my music will be on Spotify as well. But
let's see if you can get a record out before Kavana and Lulu release another duet.
Okay, well, they are best friends.
Well, they've got that up on you.
Okay, we'll see you very soon. Thank you all for listening, watching, and we'll see you very soon.
Bye.